Hello, everyone, and welcome to Football Analysis. Today, we're just going to look at an introduction into not the module as we did last week, but more the topic itself of football analysis. So, we're going to look at the nature and origin of match analysis, why we might undertake it, when to use it, and some of the theories that surround the analysis of the match. And then next week, we're going to look at doing some notational analysis. So, in general, match analysis. Well, why is match analysis important? Really, so ball games are much more difficult to appraise than a normal. I say normal, a solo sport that doesn't involve balls. So, track and field, swimming, cycling, those sort of events have a finish, an end point. If you to win, you need to finish before anybody else. It's pretty straightforward. How to win, you just beat somebody else. Whereas ball games are the most goals scored wins. Now, often the outcome of a game, which could be more goals scored than the other team, is different to how we actually perform. So obviously we've heard that teams didn't deserve to win or whatever, or teams deserved to win when they didn't. So often the outcome of a match is different to the performance of a match. So you've got things like chance goals or deflections or own goals that might sway the match, even though the performance has been good. So if we just analyse the match on the outcome, we might not understand the full picture. So match analysis is aiming to provide like a clear criteria to evidence performance. So have we performed well based on clear, unbiased evidence? So the nature of it, basically, match analysis refers to objective recording and examination of events. So no opinion. A tackle's a tackle. It's not whether it's a good tackle or a bad tackle at this point, or a pass is a pass, a mispass is a mispass. We're just objectively recording the data to be analysed later on. May focus on one player or all players or players around the ball or players in defence. Obviously, there's many different aspects that we can focus on. Generally, it's on a player or a group of players. It ranges in sophistication from players to team conformity to a plan. So it can simply be as simple as how many passes in a game, all the way up to describing a pattern of play and to sort of make sure the almost culture or sort of ideology of the football team is being portrayed on the pitch. So it might be however many passes we want to complete. That's what we can analyze. So we can go all the way up, all the way through the spectrum from notational, which is obviously just using pens and paper, all the way up to sophisticated thousands of pounds worth of software and digital coding. So why do you think we need to use match analysis? So obviously, there's a lot of reasons why we might need to use it. That might be to find strengths, improvements that can be made. It can be to find our own weaknesses in teams or in individual performers. Also to counter the opponent's strength. So we don't just have to analyse ourselves, we can analyse others. So if we know what the opponent's strength is, we can try and counter that with something that we can do, or we can exploit an opponent's weakness. Accuracy of the coaching process is important as well. So the coaching process obviously involves some form of analysis. You might have seen it in like a cycle. So you've got like a performance, an observation, analysis of the observation, interpretation of the observation, planning, preparation, and then back to performance. So that's like a weekly cycle almost, if you think about it. So if we can't effectively analyze the performance, then how can we effectively plan and prepare to improve that performance? So if we think we're performing great, so we won 1-0, but we actually performed terribly, then we might expect to go into the next game and win, but we perform the same, but we don't get the same look, so we lose 4-0. We need to ensure that the performance is being analysed correctly and using the correct data points. It's obviously really important. Making individual players better as well is good. And most importantly as well is research last year shows that a coach can only recall fewer than half of the events that actually happened in the game. So half of the events the coach can't recall. So there might have been events that the coach can't recall that have been really important. So by getting it on video or notationally analysing it, we can evidence that and make sure we are reminded of things that we might have missed. So what do we actually need to analyse? So this is a good quote here. Not everything that counts can be counted, and not everything that can be counted counts. So we'll just need to employ this effectively and decide what the correct information that we want to collect is. We might not be collecting the same data as other teams. We might have our own data that we need to collect. But basically, whatever we count might not actually count to the overall game. And then on the opposite to that is some things that we can't actually put a number to have an effect. So it's just about trying to get an effective analysis and decide what the correct information is, and not just taking that as absolute. So what we've got then is different aspects. Yeah, so different aspects of analysis when we're talking about what to analyze, that we can then create a better picture. So we've got the obvious technical aspects, which is video footage of a player performing skills, passing, shooting, heading, and we evaluate the technique, provide feedback, and then potentially design some form of session or drill or skills intervention to help improve that technique. We can also use specialist software like Quintech and Dartfish to analyze one player, and then obviously we can look at certain aspects like angles of joints or whatever it is. Or we can just do this by eye. Obviously, the video footage needs to be a video footage, but we could use specialist software with all the fancy lines and angles, or we could literally just use video footage with paint, and we still get a similar effect. That's something that we'll look at as well later on. We have behavioural aspects. So these are the mental. So the mental factors. Obviously, we cannot directly assess those in a game. We can't see how somebody is feeling, but we can see how people are behaving. So it's inferred from people's behaviours. Things like game reading skills is what we're kind of looking at, and sort of decision making. So if there's something happening in the back play that this player should have read, have they read it, or have they missed it, or have they made the wrong decision several times? Have they chose not to cross when they should have been crossing several times? Emotional state as well. So you can have like tallies for negative body language or aggressive actions or negative behavior towards other players, and that'll give us a good idea of the mental factors in that particular player or as a team in general. We have the physical aspects, which is movement and work rates, often using GPS in the sort of the bigger teams, and sometimes using video. Harder to do it on video, but obviously we can do it. Tracked GPS is much better, so it tells us lots of different things: velocity, speed, change of direction, time spent running, time spent sprinting, maximum speeds. Obviously, the data that I think there's 80 different points of data that the newer GPS software can come up with. Obviously, heart rate, fatigue levels, and things like that. And we can use these to assess workload and assess if players are overtrained or if players are undertrained. So these are the physiological aspects, the physical aspects that we'll need to analyze as well. And then we've got the tactical aspects. So these are a team-wide one, really. So this is deciding effective strategies to suit the team, like an overall plan to combat another team, or some sort of tactic that you want your team to use, like set plays or decision-making. We can use data from other teams to help us make decisions by knowing what a team usually does in a situation. We can try and combat that so when that situation arises with something else, so we can have planned set pieces in. Or we could obviously if we've got a tactic where we're trying to push forward. If we're not doing that on the video footage, then we're not achieving that, or if we're doing it too much or too little. But it's mainly the team-wide stuff that we're looking at there. And then inside that obviously comes the technical, inside the tactical comes the technical and the physical as well. So none of these are separate on their own, but these are all different aspects that we need to think about. And then the last one as well is critical incidents. So it's the kind of like injury analysis on video. So we can analyze when injuries happen and what times they happen in the game and what they are doing when they happen. So a lot of research lately has been doing that in Premier League, shown that more injuries happen in the first and last 15 minutes of a game when people are trying to sort of compete for possession a lot more vigorously. In the first and last 15, a lot more injuries happen there. And generally, those injuries happen when you're being tackled or when you're tackling. So we know that those are the areas. And then we can also analyse the video footage of the injury and decide whether it is a technical fault in the injury. So, the player's running incorrectly or the slide tackle incorrectly, which has caused the injury, or if it is just an external factor, that it was just a hard tackle, or it was an environmental issue where the grass was too slippy or something like that. So we can try and reduce injury risk by understanding the injuries much better than we do. So when do you think we would use these? So obviously we can use them to guide team preparation for a specific fixture, knowing what we did last week to what we can do next week. The key stages are sort of before, during, and after a game. So we could do pre-match, post-match, and during the match analysis. Half-time, we can obviously at half-time we can have tallies on how many passes have been completed, how many lost, how many shots on goals, or anything like that. Really, whatever we want. We can also have larger points of analysis, such as if it's like a big tactical analysis that we're trying to change. Instead of just something for a game, we can have end season, mid season, and pre season analysis. Just depends on when what point in the season and what the goal is in that particular season. So if we're trying to change something all season, we might do the analysis in pre season, post season. And then in each game, we might have a pre and post match analysis just to check smaller aspects of the game. So why might we need it pre-match, in-game, and post-game? Do you think? So hopefully you thought about some things there why we might need analysis, and then how we're gonna. Now the rest of the module is sort of looking at how we're gonna do that analysis. And how we present that analysis back. So if we was an analyst, how would we present that back to the coach? The task this week is just to read the book section below on notation and notational analysis and motion analysis. It'll just give you a good introduction on what those two are. And then next week, we're going to look at notational analysis in more depth. So that's everything for today. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you all next week on video. Feel free to come and see me if you need to.